So everybody should have some recovery gear. I mean, every Jeep on a run should have recovery gear. I think it should be mandatory, but I don't run the joint, so let's call this highly recommended. This bag right here, everything, all my basic recovery gear fits in this. It's just a cheap Rothco GI tool bag. You can get them on Amazon for less than $20. Needs a couple of shackles, at least 2. Pair of gloves to protect your hands. If you got a winch, you definitely need some gloves. Leather ones would be better than some thin ones. Recovery strap, that's a 3-inch, 30,000-pound strap. You could probably get away with going narrower if you wanted to. Do not get the straps that have the metal hooks on the end. Those things are just projectiles waiting to happen. Those things are for towing, not for recovery. None of this stuff is expensive. Those shackles, the strap, you can get those at Atwoods or Tractor Supply. They're not that much money. The shackles are pretty cheap. The strap is pretty cheap. The gloves, those are just some cheap gloves from, these are Hyper Tough, so these are from Walmart. Those were probably $5 or $6 gloves, but they'll protect your hands from crap. If you got a winch, add a short tree saver strap, snatch block, and preferably some kind of line weight, though you can jury rig a line weight in the field using like a floor mat or something like that. Basically, if the winch line were to break, that line just falls to the ground instead of snapping back and possibly injuring people. For recovery gear, you want to go heavier than what your vehicle weighs. Most of this stuff is rated for like a static load, so whenever you start pulling on a vehicle, that's not a static load anymore, and the amount of force applied to the strap is usually much more than what the vehicle actually weighs. So you want to go at least 1.5 or 2 times your vehicle's weight. In my case, I can go pretty light because my Jeep's pretty light. If your Jeep's heavier, you need to go with heavier gear. Shackles are rated differently. This is a Smitty built shackle, but like I said, you can get these at Tractor Supply and Atwoods for cheaper. This is rated for 4 3/4 tons. Shackles are they're tested at a much greater weight than their like working load. So the 4 3/4 tons is basically like a working load, but they're testing, whenever they test these things, they're tested to anywhere from 2.5 to 5 times that weight, and it just varies by who makes the shackle. So definitely don't go too light on your gear. If you want to combine 2 of these straps, you need to invest in a soft shackle. That will make it to where you can get the straps apart. If you don't have a soft shackle, you can actually intertwine the straps to extend them. Stick a stick or something where the 2 straps meet, or you'll never get them back apart again, and you'll have 2 straps that are basically permanent. Let's see, there's lots of stuff I'm forgetting. This is just basic bare bones recovery stuff that everybody needs to have in the back of their Jeep for group runs. I highly recommend it. Kinetic recovery rope. If you can afford one, a kinetic recovery rope is awesome. You can look them up on YouTube and Google. There's a guy out in Utah called he runs a company called Winder Towing. He does a lot of work around Moab. There's lots of videos of him using the Jeep XJ, pulling out vehicles much larger than him using one of those. Basically, whenever you pull it taut, it stretches out like a bungee cord to some extent, and then that energy is stored in the rope and transferred to the towed vehicle, and it'll sometimes pop it out of a sticky hole. It's better to use those if you're going to be yanking on something than to use even a recovery strap. They're not really meant to be used for yanking. You can cause a lot of damage doing that. So be careful. Always start with just a basic pull without yanking on anybody, and then work your way up from there to get them out. Use the minimum amount of force necessary. That'll save your vehicle, their vehicle, and possibly injuring somebody whenever equipment fails. Speaking of shackles, when you put shackles on things, you do not need to tighten the hell out of them, or you'll need tools to get them back apart. Especially if they've been hanging off the front of your Jeep for a while to start with, been exposed to weather, have some corrosion in the threads. It's going to be very hard to get it off the vehicle. All you have to do is snug them down and then back them off 1/8 or 1/4 of a turn and leave them. Then, even after you complete a pull or whatever, you can easily unscrew it by hand without having to get wrenches out or large screwdrivers to try to get them unscrewed. Even whenever you're hanging them off the Jeep, they don't have to be tightened down. You could just keep them in your Jeep, in your bag over there. They don't look as cool being hidden in the bag, but not everything's about looking cool. Or you can just leave them hanging off your vehicle. I've done them to where snugging them down, backing them off 1/8 of a turn. I've never had one fall off of the Jeep on me.